welcome to Trek Companion. This is episode 372. I'm your host, Brian Williams.
I'm Adam Caesar.
I'm Stephen Embry.
And we are taking a break from our normal programming where we discuss or review episodes of Star Trek to talk about the Universal Studios Fan Fest 2025, the Star Trek component of it anyway. We have a couple weeks to kill before we can start Strange New Worlds Season 3. And I thought it would be fun to show you guys some pictures and talk a little bit about it. For folks that don't know, I live in LA, but Adam is in Chicago and Steve is in Kansas City. So they were not able to go. FanFests this is the first year they did it. They've already announced they're going to do it at least one more year. I assume if it's successful, they'll keep it going. If you're familiar with Halloween Horror Nights, it's very similar to that, except instead of horror IP and scary mazes and stuff, it's different, like fun IP and not scary stuff. And this year, among other things, Star Trek was included. There was the Dungeons and Dragons, a bunch of anime, awesome Back to the Future stuff. This is the 40th anniversary of Back to the Future. But I don't have time to talk about any of that. What we're going to discuss today is Star Trek. I'm going to be showing about 24 pictures that I took. I'm not a professional photographer. I'm sure there's better pictures online, but this is how I can kind of talk about it. If you would like, I think I'm going to put this episode on YouTube. So if you want to follow along and see the pictures, just hop over to YouTube and search for Trek Companion 372. All right, so if you're familiar with Universal Studios Hollywood, you come in and you've got about a block or so of their version of Main Street. The one picture I didn't take, there's a restaurant right near the entrance, very close, called Hollywood and Dine, which is a joke on the famous intersection in LA, Hollywood and Vine. That's the one where they frequently turn it into something else. That is not what we're looking at here. I'll get to that in a second. So Hollywood and Dine became Quarks. Right now, for Jaws' 50th anniversary, they turned it into some kind of Jaws restaurant. But I didn't take a picture of the front of that, of Hollywood and Dine. So let me come back to 10 forward here. Once you enter Hollywood and Dine, they've got oh, look, it's my wife. You've got photos, all these photos of Quarks and DS9. It's fun. They had all these beverages. Some were actually alcoholic beverages. What made it really fun, of course, was that everything was in universe. Even recent stuff, that Orion Hurricane, that's the drink that Mariner makes on the live action. Those old scientists.
Fun.
How many did you try?
I did the Plomac tea because it was non-alcoholic. I don't like tea, so. And then my wife got the Andorian ale. Actually, yeah, so this is our meal. You can see her Andorian ale on the right there. I don't remember what each one of these things was like there was nothing completely made up as far as the names of the food. Everything was something that we'd actually heard of in universe, even if we'd never seen it. I think the one in the back there was Hasperat, Bajorn, whatever, or no, there was a Cardassian one in there. I don't remember, but it was fun.
Cool.
It was cool. I gotta say, I thought the actual taste of all the foods was just a little bit too exotic to actually enjoy. Originally, when I saw the menu before we went, I was like, we're going to go there. And then we did. The very first thing we're going to do is eat, and then we'll do the Star Trek stuff. And then I want to come back and eat some more. I want to eat everything on the menu. I want to try it all. But honestly, after we had these things, I didn't even finish these because I was like, I didn't actually love the food that much.
Some kind of disclaimer, not necessarily edible for human beings or something.
You didn't try the Goth?
They did not have Goth. They did not have Goth. They had other Klingon stuff. You can just barely see my dessert there. I don't remember what that was on the right. It was anyway. It was some kind of truffle, anyway. Okay, and then after you leave Hollywood and Dine, if you turn right, like you're heading over to Waterworld, again, I'm talking like people know Universal Studios Hollywood, but if you don't, on your left there, was 10 forward, and this is 10 forward like in Picard. I didn't have time to actually go in there and get a beverage, but because there was a bit of a line.
Mhm.
But it was cool. There was another thing I did not include a picture of where they had the horseshoe from the Enterprise D. So you just right in front of the 10 forward outside, so you could sit and
Mhm.
take your picture in like the captain's chair. But it was a very limited thing just for taking pictures. Okay, and then after this, if you were to turn left, they used to have during Halloween Horror Nights, they used to have The Walking Dead, like a Walking Dead maze in this spot. That briefly became permanent. That was one of the few times I've seen them do that, where something was so popular during Halloween Horror Nights that they left it going even after Halloween Horror Nights, and you could just go to it during the day. So that's where this was. It's kind of like halfway between Main Street and Despicable Me. But honestly, it would have been easy to miss if you didn't, unlike most of the other stuff that you couldn't miss it. If you didn't know to go looking for it, I could see how you could have missed it.
Mhm.
So once you enter here, there's a
Line.
there's a line. Yes, there is a line. Now I went a couple of different Saturdays. The first time I went, of course, we wanted to do this first. There were a lot of people, and I mean, it was never that long. I think 30
Mhm.
minutes maybe was the longest I waited. Maybe 40, maybe 40. But by the second time I went, and I did it at like 10 o'clock at night, and there was like one person or something. It was I was able to do it. I did it like maybe half a dozen times total. And a couple of those times there was nobody. There was one time I didn't want to take any pictures at all, but there were kind of two paths you could go. I'll show you that in a second. So that was another reason I wanted to do it multiple times so I could better see some things.
Mhm.
Once you get through that line, there's like kind of a waiting area where they bring up a video. So it kind of says now boarding for a bit. And then they play this video. I'm sure somebody put the video online, but they've actually got a person in uniform and talking about that you are at the museum. So you're immediately in universe.
Mhm.
And this is the museum, like the end of Picard. So I guess this would have been like, I don't know, a year after Picard season 3 or something. They even had some footage in the video of that they'd just taken from Picard of the museum and the different ships around the museum.
Cool.
But they make it clear that you are about to tour the Enterprise D. Oh, and they had this. I don't think I've seen this little spaceport LA thing before. It's not a very good picture, but this was kind of up all over the place as you were entering before you entered the Enterprise D. Okay, so once you enter, you can see in the back there that you're exiting a shuttle, like they've taken you over.
Mhm.
Starfleet Museum Shuttlecraft 2? Is that what that was? So you can't see it great in this picture, but if you see this kind of column on the left and you see a little bit of a rope, they immediately divide the group into two. So there's kind of a left and a right. And this is the same. This was true of all the things at Universal Studios Fan Fest where there was a full interaction thing. For example, Dungeons and Dragons. What happens is the structure was the same. They split you up into kind of a left and a right side of the room, and you go from room to room. And as you enter a room, you stop, some kind of story thing plays out. Then you go through a corridor or something to get to the next room. You stop, a story plays out. And the story kind of plays out with this one exception of the opening. The story kind of plays out in the middle of the room, and you've got all the people going through it on the left and right sides. So that meant, for example, by the time you get to the grand finale of the Enterprise D bridge, if you wanted to be on the right side to see, I don't know, the dedication plaque, that was how you could see it. You weren't going to see it if you were on the left side.
Mhm.
So there were things that, or in engineering, the warp core was on the left side. So if you wanted to be close up to see certain things, it was worth it to go through it a couple of times. So this first bit, everybody kind of walks in. So my point is there's another group of people to the left of that column and to the left of that rope.
Gotcha.
And then everybody is standing there facing the same direction. This is the only time that really happens. Everybody's standing there facing that direction, and this is supposed to be like that's I guess a there's a force field there, and you are looking out into actual space, and you can see that is the 1701A on display at the museum.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a person talking, and it's supposed to be like you're visiting the actual museum, and she starts talking about some things. But of course, very quickly, some story stuff starts to happen on the screen. It's all video. It's just like a huge screen, but it's some mysterious entity shows up, and we go into red alert, and they're, oh, everybody hurry, go to the next room. The next room is a sick bay, and there's a couple things I wanted to point out here. Well, one, this is not a complaint. I'm just pointing it out. If you do this thing enough times, there were a couple of things that slightly took away from the immersion. This entire thing was built to only last a couple of months, not even that.
Mm-hmm.
This was only, I think it was like 3 weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it was really the equivalent of just, a few days, really. And even those were just half days, because this was only from like 6 p.m. to whatever, midnight or something.
Right.
So they did not, for example, put in ceilings. There's no ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime you look up, it's like you're on a set. So which is fine. If they ever made something like this permanent, I would love for them to put a ceiling in there. The only thing that sort of got a top was the bridge, but I think that's just because the bridge top already existed.
Right.
That came up from the show. Everything other than the bridge, they just totally made it for this, right? I mean, they borrowed some pieces here and there. Like I know the warp core came from an existing thing, but so that's just a minor thing. It's fine. It's fine. But there was a moment in this one room that made me be like, okay, this is really great. I really love this because the story stuff. So now you can see his uniform. We know what year it's supposed to be in universe, whatever. I don't know, 2401, something like that.
Right.
He's telling you all this emergency story stuff. Oh, the entity, whatever it is. But there's a point when he's like he like reaches over and he grabs some like a tricorder. I don't remember. I think it was a medical tricorder. I forget. It might have been a pad. Whatever it is. Maybe it's the thing he's holding, which is probably a medical tricorder. Whatever it is, he grabs it and he tries to use it. And then he gets really frustrated and he's like, this old tech. It's because he's in the museum. He's on the old Enterprise D.
Yeah.
So it makes it like in universe, it makes sense. And when I saw this thing other times, there were other actors who said the same line, right? So it was definitely written.
Mm-hmm.
It was planned out for us. Did most of the people in that room get that at all? Probably not. But for a Star Trek nut like me or us, right? It was great. It was great. But that was the moment I'm like, okay, whoever came up with this really cares. And that was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
That was a tiny little moment, but in a way, it was my favorite bit of the whole. But there was just so much fun stuff like that. Totally worth it. All right, so he does his emergency. So if like when I'm standing and taking this picture, if I turned around, they weren't interactive panels, but some of these were just stills made to look, but some of them were actually, video that actually incorporated some story stuff that was related to whatever was going on. All right, and the next room is engineering. That's the warp core. I'm still on the left side on this one. And there's as problems start happening, like, smoke starts coming out and there's like video effects of sparks, not actual sparks. But now if I do a 180 and turn around, so now standing here, the warp core is kind of behind me. It's a Bajoran and an Orion, and they run around the room, trying to fix engineering-y stuff, and they have story bits that they talk about. I saw several different species in this room in particular when I did it multiple times. Yeah, I mean, this is just one of those things you're like, yep, that's the table, right? Or close enough that we know that that's the table,
right.
That we always saw them standing around in engineering. So that kind of thing is very fun. Oh yeah, so there's some video sparks and smoke and stuff.
Scary.
Yeah. And then from there, oh, I didn't, I guess I didn't take a picture of it, but like every time you go from one room to the next, it's the Enterprise D corridors,
Okay.
So I
Oh,
mean,
sweet.
it's like 20 feet or something, but it's great. I
Mhm.
mean, I remember commenting to my wife at one point, I'm like, if we were rich, this would be our hallway at home. All right, so then you get to the bridge. And of course, this is the grand finale, and it was wonderful. As we know, this was the bridge that was built for Picard season 3. And you can see there is this ceiling here. Actually, the dome, which is just outside of the frame of my picture, that if you look up through the center dome, then that is just the black like we saw in the other rooms. But
Mhm.
you can see they put up rails and ropes to make basically to keep people from going into the center. But you could go into the back. I'll show you a picture of that in just a second. You could stand behind the horseshoe, but it wasn't as good of a view. So I did do it once just because I wanted to be everywhere. It was very, very difficult to resist reaching over and touching like the act because those are the actual freaking chairs.
Yeah.
I can't say that I didn't do it,
Huh.
but you've got story stuff happening, and I mean, it's a simple little story. I'll be honest, it's not as memorable or engaging as the story stuff that happened at Star Trek: The Experience, but I mean, it was fine.
Mhm.
It turned out to be a benevolent entity, and and everybody was excited because we made first contact with some mystery species. If you look over in the back of this picture, you can see the dedication plaque. So that was a good example of, oh, I wanted to make sure that I was on the right side of one of these because I wanted to get a good close-up shot of that. So yeah, like I said, you could stand completely directly behind the horseshoe if you wanted. You could kind of be back there near those panels. Just, story stuff. Yeah. So I mean, it really felt pretty damn authentic. Definitely the bridge more than anything else. So as you can see, I stood almost everywhere at some point during my half dozen runs through this. The whole thing was maybe, I don't know, 10. Oh, you know what? I didn't take a picture of? There was one more thing. Oh, well. There was one more thing. There was right between between engineering and the bridge, they put you on a turbo lift. And it was very similar to the turbo lifts like on Next Gen, just much, much bigger to accommodate more people. You're on that for a few minutes. This is worth mentioning. There was like an effect where it shows, I don't know what you call it. When you're on the turbo lift on the Enterprise D, you can see the vroom, 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 like you're going.
Right.
But there was
Right.
a point when it slowed and it stopped, and then it switched, so it was vroom, vroom,
Mhm.
which is
Oh,
turbo
nice.
lifts are supposed to go, both
Mhm.
horizontal and vertical. So it showed, I mean, there was no like you couldn't feel the room moving or something, but
Sure.
it showed that. And that was another one of those little moments where I was like, that's awesome. That's a thing they didn't have to do, you know?
Mhm.
So it was pretty great. So probably there wouldn't have been much to see in that picture, I suppose. But anyway, so that takes you to was how you end up on the bridge.
Mhm.
This is kind of the end, this picture on the bridge here. This is kind of the end where that's like the entity thing where it communicates with them. And then there is the plaque.
Cool.
And then right after this, you walk out and you're right back into Universal Studios. And the exit is actually near the entrance. So that meant you could very easily do it again, as I did. I told my girl, I said, I have to do this enough that I'll remember it forever in case they don't do it again. So
Mhm.
Right.
I did it like, I think I did it like 4 times that first night. And then when I went back a couple weeks later, I did it 2 times. So pretty
Sweet.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Thanks for sharing it.
So I'm hoping that they, they haven't announced what IP they'll have next year, but I certainly hope that Star Trek is one of them. We heard, I don't know where these rumors came from. Maybe it was just hopeful wishing, but we heard that they might have wanted to make this a permanent thing, which would be great because if they made this a permanent thing, then I would make my Universal Studios annual pass a permanent thing. Um, I would go over there just, during the workday for lunch.
Well, how did it compare to Vegas? The
I
old
mean,
Vegas?
the experience was another level because that was made to support millions of visitors over many, many years. So there was and of course that had the actual actors in the video segments and, so I mean, it wasn't as amazing as the experience, of course. But I think that would be an unrealistic expectation. I thought for what this was, it was wonderful. I mean, it was the best, most immersive thing I've done outside of the experience. How's that?
All right.
All right. Well, like I said, I hope that this comes back next year. But we are going to be back in what, 3 weeks? Is that right? I got my weeks right.
I think that's right.
All right, so we'll be back in 3 weeks to do a normal episode of our podcast where we discuss the first 2 episodes of Strange New Worlds Season 3. I'm looking forward to that. Until then, you can send us an email, trekcompanion@gmail.com. Our X handle is @trekcompanion. Episodes of our podcast are archived at trekcompanion.com. So until next time, thanks for spending half an hour with us. Take it easy.
Bye, guys.
See ya.